Great.
Great.
Hi, my name is Betsy Kemp, and I proudly serve on the restaurant marketing team here at OpenTable. We're grateful to welcome you today to In It Together, our weekly webinar series. If you like what you hear, we hope you'll consider joining us for future webinars on Wednesdays at 11. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping items. If you have questions along the way, please use the Q&A box in the top right corner of your console. We'll save some time towards the end of the conversation to answer your questions. In the resources list section on the bottom left, we have linked out to our restaurant blog, our COVID-related resource center, today's featured charity, and the registration page for future episodes. This webinar will be recorded and shared out with all of you afterwards. And with that, I'm delighted to turn it over to our host of the series, our Chief Operating Officer, Andrea Johnston.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. These times have been so tough for all of us personally and professionally, and certainly devastating for the restaurant community. I think part of the reason we've pulled together these webinars is to create a sense of community, get some thought leadership, to start a dialogue, answer questions, et cetera, et cetera. At OpenTable, aside from hosting these webinars, we've got a resource center sharing data on what's going on in each city, and we're trying to really help restaurants in any way that we can. As some of you may know, we've waived our subscription fees for the balance of the year, waived our cover fees in Q3, and have done 50% off cover fees in Q4 in an effort to really help restaurants get back on their feet. The topic of the webinar today is mastering your message. Obviously, communicating with customers and your PR strategies are important generally, but in this crisis, as things are constantly evolving, I think there's a little bit of a tweak to that. And so that's what we're here to talk about. Many of you know Elizabeth Blau, powerhouse, runs Blau and Associates Group and many restaurants in Vancouver, Vegas, and Pennsylvania. Also, Becca Parrish, whom I just had the great opportunity to meet last week, runs PR for many restaurants in New York and LA, La Bernardine, The Gray, Daniel Hume, among others. So very thrilled to have both of them here to share some perspective. And I guess to kick it off, I'd just love to hear from each of you. How have the past 3, 8, 11 weeks been for you? And where are you at right now? So maybe Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I'm actually showing off. This is not a backdrop. It hit 108 degrees yesterday in Las Vegas. So we escaped for a couple days. It's been brutal, Andrea, I've got to be honest. And I really have to thank you. OpenTable has been wonderfully supportive, as have many of our partners and landlords. It's been a really incredible time to see human kindness. We've also seen great examples of not human kindness, but I think we'd like to focus on that. I mean, for many people in the restaurant industry, we're all facing such different, experiences, because in Las Vegas, we have been so incredibly fortunate to not be as hard hit by the disease. And so our numbers have been so dramatically different from a city like New York. And so we've been open through the whole pandemic. And, I feel like a juggling act. We've turned into a marketplace. We've started family style meals. We've done meal kits. We've done live cooking demos on Instagram. It's been incredible. We've also turned half of our kitchen into a community kitchen, serving those most vulnerable in the community. So it's been quite a roller coaster ride, and I wish I had a crystal ball to see what the future is going to look like. But I can tell you, in the week and a half that we've been open now to the public, it is encouraging. So we are starting to see a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Great. And Becca, how about you support so many high profile customers. What's your world been like?
I mean, I've lived in New York. It'll be 23 years in August. And to see a city that I love so much and an industry that I love so deeply be so hard hit has been, very rough. And I think, I am an optimist, and I believe that is the way through. I also think that because restaurants were so hard hit so early on, that we're kind of leading now. Like, how do you evolve? How do you figure out ways to survive? And I agree with Elizabeth too, sort of, we've always as a company kind of led with compassion and empathy. I think that has a place in business. And I think some, maybe could perceive that as a weakness, but I really think on a human level, to understand what people are going through. And, in March I've laid off, over half my team, furloughed over half my team. And I think to understand that people are unemployed and people have lost loved ones, and to bring that understanding of what we're all facing to everything that we're doing. And in this conversation, it's about messaging. I think that, it matters more than ever, that sort of kindness and compassion. And I do think that that's the way forward. I think, more purpose-driven messaging, more understanding. I'm trying to get away from the idea of the concept of charity, because I think it's kind of heavy and laden and probably another conversation than this one. But I do think, restaurants are so much about the community. And I think how we build and future-proof our businesses moving forward, I think community and serving the community is going to be a big part of it, for us at least.
Yeah, and I've hosted, this is probably the 7th or 8th one of these, and the sentiment of community and everyone coming together has been so incredible, like sharing lessons learned and how do we get through it, and this sucks for everybody sort of thing. I'm curious, Elizabeth, as you just started reopening, you have your loyal diners and how you would market to them and interact with them pre-COVID. Has it shifted at all now that you're open, welcoming them back? And the follow-on is how do you convey the hospitality when you're wearing a mask, right? So I'd be curious if your messaging shifted a bit.
The mask thing, you're absolutely right about, because, when I'm in the restaurants, I generally walk to a table. If people are dining, I just give a little smile. And the first few times I did that, but then I realized I've got a mask on. Nobody can see I'm smiling. Maybe I need to draw a smiley face on my mask. But yeah, the communication is totally different. And, as 4 women on this webinar who thrive on the heart of communication and everything we do, it's an incredible change. And actually, Winston was amazing in terms of sharing some of the OpenTable research that you did, because if I had to guess, I would not have guessed that safety and what our sanitization protocols was the first piece of information that I was going to have to share with people. But we put it on our website, we put it on our newsletter, and we put a whole host of outlines together of exactly what it was that we were going to be providing. And so that is certainly different. And the one cute little thing that we did was I saw Patrick O'Connell at the Inn at Little Washington was going to be putting mannequins in his dining room. And I didn't think that was a direction we would go, but I also didn't want, the first experience of people coming back into the restaurant at Honey Salt to be an empty dining room and, and a bar with no patrons. So, what we did was we called some friends and asked some staff, and we got donations, because our son Cole is 15 now, but donations of giant teddy bears and Mickey Mouses and just put them out. And, really it's just about a smile. I mean, our business is the hospitality. People come to our restaurants and those across the country, not just for the food and the service, but it's an experience. I mean, especially for people who have been in their homes for, 3 months plus, you just want a little escape. And so, we just wanted to be able to, provide a little smile and a little, lightheartedness, because it's scary coming back to a restaurant the first time, when you've been enclosed in a bubble. And so that communication has really been critical. And thank you for alerting to us that would be our customers' #1 priority in coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. I have not. I've been doing my pickup and I've been doing my takeout and all of that, but I have not been out to a restaurant yet. Obviously, San Francisco is still closed, but I have been to the grocery store, and literally I'm trying to smile at the cashier with my mask on, and I'm like having to do the biggest eyes that I could ever come up with to convey like, hey, thanks, we're here. Thank you for working and all of that. So Becca, it's very strange. Like, the over exaggeration of things. So Becca, obviously most of your clients are in New York, still closed. So how are you working with them on what their reopening strategy is, how they're continuing to connect with their customer base?
Yeah, I think part of it is, trying to get your head around what reopening could look like, but also understanding, what they can be doing now. I think, pre-COVID, we always advise our clients to be obviously strategic and to think about, who you are, what you stand for, what you want to put out in the world. Post-COVID, all of that is still relevant, but I think the strategy has to change week to week because the world is changing so rapidly. And I think things that maybe you wouldn't, I love that example, Elizabeth, about the teddy bears, because that speaks to who you guys are. And that's thoughtful and playful and fun. And, we have worked with Eric Repair for a long time. And, this is the most lauded restaurant in New York City in terms of 3 Michelin stars, 4 New York Times stars consistently for nearly 40 years now. And, he's doing something so simple. He's cooking food that he's making for his family. Very, it's not, haute cuisine, seafood, temple, nothing to do with that. It has to do with what he's actually just cooking at home. And that is who he is, but you would have no idea that was unless this happened. And so he's kind of leaning into what makes you who you are. I think it's a real time to be transparent and to be creative and try different things out. Social media, more people are online than ever. The numbers are up on every platform. And so I think, from a technical standpoint, not only are we saying, try things out, be nimble. If it doesn't work, that's okay. But also to engage with your audience, to ask them what they want to see, what they might need. I think that we all, it speaks to sort of that vulnerability and transparency and intimacy. Like if you had told me I was going to be having a conversation with OpenTable in my bedroom, because I have this little cabin upstate and there's no privacy anywhere, that would be nuts, right? But here we are, and I'm honored to be here and really do appreciate the work that you guys are doing in these webinars. But to learn the technical aspects of what does a virtual digital event look like? What's Instagram Live? What are the best practices there? Things that we wouldn't think that we would be advising our clients on. But I think that, and I think all of that will stick around. I think to not to be okay with asking your guests, what they would like to see from you, and I think there are lots of examples of success stories so far out there.
I think on that communication note, what was super helpful for us in the beginning is we formed a Facebook community. So it's Save Our Local Las Vegas Restaurant Community. So it was just a landing place for fellow restaurateurs to, gather information, to share information. And then one of the things that that Becca did with her company that was so helpful was to send out a weekly email that aggregated some of the best articles and information and what people were doing around the country. One of the other things that I did was I was invited to join the leadership group of the IRC, which is the Independent Restaurant Coalition. And so we have calls 3 days a week, and it's restaurateurs and chefs from all over the country. And I think at this point, in order to save our restaurant industry, making sure that our voices are heard at the highest levels, that making sure that our local politicians, that our national politicians are listening and understanding how devastating the impact. I mean, obviously we see what, the frontline workers and the hospital workers are doing, and it's absolutely extraordinary. But, it's the same people who are working in Target or Whole Foods or Kroger's or any supermarket, just like the restaurant workers who are going back to make sure that there's food, and also doing programs to make sure that the elderly or anybody that's homebound in our community is provided a nutritious meal. And so what happens with this reopening and these phases, which are geared to keeping us all safe. And so we know that some jurisdictions it's 25% of your occupancy. For us in Las Vegas is 50%. But Andrea, those numbers, as you know, are untenable financially for the restaurant community. You can't operate, on those kind of financial parameters and expect that, you're going to be able to sustain. I mean, my landlord hasn't said my rent is going to be 25%. I can't go back to my chef or my general manager and say, hey, by the way, this is going to be your new salary. Our fixed costs are tremendous. And so it's not just a loss of 50% of revenue. For some of us, that's 100 of profits. And so, what you're doing to support us is incredible, but we are going to need more support on the federal level in terms of a stimulus package, in terms of, our business interruption. There's so many things that we're going to need. Of the restaurant community is going to look different than a few months ago.
Yeah, well, and I know the PPP went out, but that kind of missed the mark for a lot of the independent restaurants. And so I think what the IRC is pretty incredible and seems to be fairly impactful in terms of how many people are there chatting with the government on this. I'm curious, back on the communications side, are you encouraging your diners to help lobby on your behalf, or are you just focused on welcoming them back in?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we have to stick with one message, and that we're a safe and welcoming place. We are certainly actively, we are very lucky that we have very proactive leaders in our government community in Nevada. I'm sure it's not lost on anybody that we are probably the #1 hospitality-driven tourism system in the entire country. So, it's at top of mind. We just heard that our casinos can open on June 4th, which is for the city. But, until the start flying at a regular amount and we start seeing our convention and our international business. So it's a catch-22. But I think that we've all done, a good job in communicating to our guests about the need. And I'd be very interested at some point for you to look on your OpenTable surveys, because I'm starting to see that the social media reviews that come in seem to be filled with more of a spirit of kindness and compassion. A friend of mine in Connecticut just put a heartfelt rebuttal to somebody who, was sitting outside in Connecticut in 50 some odd degree weather, and, some of the dishes were cold, shocking. And, what he said was that, this review was, kind of just hit, kind of humanity to him after everything that he's been through. And, as Becca said, so much of his staff having to be laid off. I mean, just the emotional toll that we've all gone through, to have somebody, words be so scathing. So it would be interesting to see from an OpenTable perspective, whether you're seeing an uptick in that kindness factor. But from a communications perspective, man, if people could have a little patience with us, knowing that we're not just reopening, but we're reopening into a brave new world. I mean, for cooks and servers and runners and dishwashers to be wearing masks. I mean, any of you who go even to the supermarket for a few minutes and see how hard it is to breathe in a mask, imagine being on a hot cooking line or, trying to communicate with guests. So it's a challenging. And so I will implore anybody who's not in the restaurant world to share with their friends, just be nice.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good pointer, and we should be able to look at some of that data and the reviews and whatnot. I'm always not surprised. So many diners have never worked in a restaurant, so they have no idea what actually happens in a restaurant like the rest of us. And so it's sort of this clueless thing. And so we're trying to think through, how do we educate them? That's why we released our data, so they know how devastating this is to restaurants. Don't do no shows, right? And then we're gonna think through some PSAs on, like, wear your mask even if you don't have to, like the restaurants are, to take safety. So we're always open to ideas like that. I guess, Becca's switching back to you. I think a lot of the folks on this call are really eager to get, like, what would some of your quick tips be on how to interact with diners or the press or your messaging right now? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. And I wanted to touch on quickly, because I thought it was, Elizabeth, I appreciate you talking about the newsletter, but also I think to be a resource that we think we have to pay attention, obviously, to what's going on in the world and the industry, but we realize, like, our clients don't necessarily communicate themselves. They're just so busy and deeply in what they're doing. So we have hosted these town halls that have been really great for our restaurant clients, for our hotel clients, for our products clients, and just that sharing and camaraderie, I think, has been really useful. So in terms of, this is something that Elizabeth and I also talked about, but I kept toying with this idea of, a decade or so ago, when people like, print's dead, magazines it's all dead, and it was for some. And I think the ones that it wasn't dead for, and let's say, the New York Times or Bon Appetit, but when they realized a magazine was not about a physical thing you held in your hands, right? It was about an experience. And I think the restaurants that will survive are the ones who are able to say, we are not a physical place only that you walk into. We are an experience, a curated experience that draws certain people because of what you offer. And I think there are a host of ways to dig into that. And one of them is, and the idea of, how do you deliver hospitality to someone's home, and we've always wondered, how do you translate the being hospitable online? Because if you're a hospitality company, you have to be hospitable online too. And that includes all your channels, your social media, what are you putting out on your newsletter, what partners are you choosing to align with? All of that is still relevant. So I think that, in terms of concrete examples, we've seen a lot of, we work with Cote Korean Steakhouse in New York City, and the owner, Simon Kim, and he's, a phenom, really, and has an incredible team. And they've just been super creative with what they've done. They've come up, graphically. I believe in good design very much, and I think that it can make somewhat complex ideas digestible and get you excited about them. They had this really cool graphic about coat delivery. They were able to take advantage, like for Memorial Day, they offered hot dogs for the first time. For Mother's Day, they did something with like rosé and fillets. And again, they have been communicating with their audience too, trying things out. So I think that's a great example. On the West Coast, we work with Lowry's, who has been around for 80 years, known for their prime rib sort of extravaganza. It's such a interactive experience for people. But they've done these prime rib feasts and delivered them at home, and really activated on social media to engage with their fans. I wrote some of these down. I'm going to find my notes. I thought this was kind of fun. People providing Zoom photos of the restaurant or the bar. So, in February, when you would meet your friends at a bar or your favorite restaurant, you could be there, but now you can do it online because you can be at the background of the bar. I wish I had, the Odeon right here. I should have thought of that. That's really bad marketing on my part. Anyway, so you could be at the Odeon's bar and have a,
we've had fun with that. We've had fun with that too. Yeah. We, when they allow us to do cocktails to go. It had to come in the manufacturer's packaging, but I still wanted to, not just deliver a bottle of rum or tequila. And so we've partnered with Casa Dragones and are doing my favorite, which is the signal of summer. Andrea, because this is our favorite, is
our
watermelon margarita.
Yeah.
And so you have a mason jar full of the fresh watermelon juice and a little agave and the lime. So it's all ready to mix. And Casa Dragones was even kind enough to supply us with their giant ice cube tray. So you can fill it with signature Casa Dragones ice cubes. But even simple things like every one of our takeout bags has a personalized note from Kim and I, just thanking you for your business and, reminding people that they're not just supporting us, but all of our, our team and their families, and, and how much we appreciate it. At Mother's Day, two of our corporate chefs, their daughters are in elementary school. And so they decorated the Mother's Day bags with flowers and hearts and, and drew all over them. And, again, I think it's just back to, these simple acts of kindness and something unexpected. And our Easter takeaway bags, because I'm a sugar fiend. So we put boxes of the goofy marshmallow peeps that probably can last through 17 pandemics. But just again, things to make people, smile. So to Becca's point, just getting, as creative, and just realizing that, we can't provide the experience in the restaurant. So this is going to be in your home. And so, just trying to think of those things to make it special.
Amazing touches. I love it. The peeps. Good one. I have two more questions for you, and then I want to make sure we open it up for the audience. So one, talking about your messaging and your communication, it feels that everything is hyper local right now, because who knows, I don't know when I want to get on a plane next, and I usually fly 40% of the time, right? And so at what point do you think you'll consider shift, like local marketing communications in Vegas, in New York, in wherever, versus opening it up again for a more national level? Because obviously there are so many tourists that come into Vegas, that come into New York. How do you think about that balance?
I mean, I think that, it's interesting from a, as a media expert or, and my company's 15 years old. I was doing this before I started my own company. But I was a journalist before that. But I think that, so many people want to talk about the restaurant industry again, because, I just feel so, I could get a little, profound here, but I do think that restaurants really provide something that is hard, that is powerful. And I think we underestimated that. And I think this has shown us how sort of deeply beloved and sort of naive we were. I mean, people that were attracted to the restaurant business were not attracted to the corporate business for a reason. And I'm speaking in generalizations, but I think that, there's a real interest now in covering it from a media perspective. And I think there's an awareness of how much it was valued. And I think that sort of, like I said, camaraderie and nourishment and joy and fun that restaurants provided, I think that people really feel their absence. And I think when people do have the courage, find the courage and the confidence to get back out, that restaurants, we're going to be there to serve them, So from a communications perspective, I just feel like we have taken advantage of the fact that there's so much interest in restaurants, very much nationally. For our clients. I mean, we have clients that have never been on MSNBC or done any sort of, TV, because people want to know what's happening. So we really, yes, there's been a lot of local, because you can only get it locally, but we have been, pushing our clients to be able to share what they're going through, and also on a level of teaming with people in terms of distribution, like a Gold Belly or someone where they can get out, to a larger audience. But Andrea, I'm not sure I'm answering your question accurately.
You're saying wonderful things. I like what you're saying.
That's all I'm That's all I'm
No, I agree. I agree completely, Becca, because you know, again, we're in Las Vegas, which is not just national, it's an international, you know, city. And so everybody is watching. We're one of the first, you know, wave of cities to reopen. So, you know, we've definitely, you know, had that communication. You know, I've written a few articles. So, you know, we're just anticipating people coming back. I've already got my first flight booked. You know, I won't miss my East Coast summer, so we're flying back on June 10th. Granted, the airlines first canceled my flight and now have changed the departure time about 3 times. So it's definitely a brave new world of flying, but yeah. With Becca, you know, there is better time. And you know, when you think about what restaurants are, people celebrate engagements and baby showers and weddings. I mean, you know, we are that emotional connection. We are the nurturers. And so thank goodness people have missed us. And I know there's a lot of moms and dads who have had it with, you know, cooking and, you know, preparing 3 meals with everybody being in the house. So we're ready. We're ready for action.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I guess my last question is, you know, I've talked to restaurateurs every day. You know, people are furloughing people. People are considering whether they want to reopen again, even if they got the PPP. I mean, it's just brutal across the board. I guess I would ask both of you, you know, what gives you hope and what makes you feel optimistic about how this industry is going to recover, and what keeps you going to know that restaurants are here to stay and this is why we're going to keep fighting the fight?
I'll go, Elizabeth. I do think, I mean, to state the obvious, that food is elemental. And I think food is community. I think food, you know, brings people together. That it is a basic human need. And so that knowing that, and knowing that, I think right beside that, people have to be together. And I think there will be a segment of the population that is going to be really reticent to do that for a long, long time. And I think that shows that we need to find ways to engage with them. But I think that there were some ugly truths that have come to light and about our industry. And I do think that we will be better and stronger and smarter. And I do applaud, you know, I had the honor of working with Tom Colicchio for many, many years. And, you know, I applaud someone who is unabashedly political and is really, you know, connecting the dots now in a way that is hopefully better for the industry overall. I think we need more people to be daring. And I think we need more people to speak out. I think we realized that we were kind of naive and weren't politicized. And there's power in that. There's power in being able to push for rights and for money and for, you know, government assistance. And I just think we've grown up a lot in a short amount of time. And I think that can only be positive. So that gives me hope that it can be a more meaningful way forward, not only for the celebrity chefs, but for all of the industry that has, you know, gotten us, you know, to where we are, because we did become part of the entertainment, part of the culture in the way that historically music and, you know, art and theater, all that, we got there. And then we just were gone so quickly.
Right.
And I think that we have to future-proof. We have to just be smarter. And I think I'm so confident that we will be.
Awesome. Elizabeth, anything to add?
Well, you know, during this pandemic, it became apparent in Las Vegas, especially with the closure of the school systems, that there were going to be a tremendous need in our community for food. 3 Square, which is a model food bank in the country, converted to a grocery model with 30 pop-up sites around the city to deliver that food. But there were so many seniors and anybody that was, you know, at risk from a health perspective. So we were part of a group that started something called Delivering with Dignity. And over the last, I think, 8 weeks, we've been able to get over 56,000 meals out to those most vulnerable in the community. And, you know, this model of delivering directly to the doorstep of those homes was something that didn't exist. And so to see our community, the private sector in funding, the nonprofit sector in identifying those triple threat most at risk, but then to see our vendors, Andrea, to see our farmers with all of the strip restaurants closed down, with all of this produce, because thankfully Mother Nature didn't take a break, with all of this, beautiful produce, just dropping it at our doors to be able to, provide these fruits and vegetables for these meal programs. We had one of our vendors loan us a refrigerated truck. I mean, trying to get 500 to 800 of these meals out a day. We didn't have the refrigeration capabilities not to store the meals and not to store all the food. And so not only did they donate this truck, but they deliver diesel fuel to keep it going every day. I could go on and on about Freedom Meats, who, again, with all of their strip restaurants closed, donating over $100,000 worth of meat to us. And so, with the reopening, that doesn't mean, every state is pretty much saying, those at risk remain at home. And so, we're not seeing a decrease in the numbers of those who need food. We're seeing it on an uptick. And so, when you see a city come together and you see vendors and farmers and ranchers and people coming together in this kind of way, just to make sure that in the middle of this, that, that people aren't, we dream all day of dishes and new dishes and items and specials, but to think that there's people without food in our community is to us unthinkable. And so we've been very proud to be part of it. So
that's amazing. No, I love it. It's inspiring and necessary. Betsy, why don't I pass it to you since you're manning the Q&A and see if anything's come in?
Yeah, we've got some great questions coming in, and thank you for the conversation thus far. It's really inspiring. When thinking about how to communicate, this is a question from one of our restaurants. When thinking about how to communicate your new sanitation standards, is there a way to personalize it or make it less sterile feeling?
Well, I'm happy for you to go on the Honey Salt website and see what we did. We copied best practices. We, looked up what some of our favorite restaurants were doing. I don't think you want to over communicate it. I think you want to keep it as, as to the point as possible. But, we've added emergency medical leave so that if any of our employees are feeling sick, or even any members of their families are feeling sick, that they have that. We're doing temperature checks for our employees when they come in for their shift. So we just took the 5 or 6 most salient points. I didn't want to we're restaurants. We've always sanitized. We always wear gloves. We have to abide to the strictest standards from the health department. So I didn't want to get, overly into that, because those are, standards that, that we operate, focus more on the COVID specific standards, knowing that our restaurants are always clean. So that was just my take.
Great. Becca, do you have anything to add there?
Well, I think it's okay to be transparent. I think it's things that you thought were like, what? We're going to show on our feed, people socially distant and, wearing a mask. I think this idea of a mask where you could actually have a clear separation so you could see people smiling would be awesome, except there's probably like spittle coming out, unfortunately. But I think that I think it's okay. It's okay to be transparent, and on social you can control that, But that's, people want to feel safe. That's going to be part of them, being able to come forward.
Yep.
I did have another idea just related to what Elizabeth said that I think people would find useful, but about the farmers and everything. I think also with social media, there's a real opportunity to showcase people or celebrate people that people wouldn't know about necessarily. And that speaks into just trying to think about who's your community. Go on a virtual farm tour with one of your farmers, or someone that was a back a house or front.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, you're like really getting to know the restaurant in a different way, and that's what's meaningful to you. Also, think about like holidays that you have upcoming. I mean, I feel very much that, you know, everything that's happened, you want to maximize it. I mean, I've had friends who've had birthdays, obviously, as we all have over the past 2 months, and I've had so much fun, like doing these nutty videos, and you know, that I would never have made a video for a friend and send it to them on their birthday. And so I think there's something to that. You know, it's really an exciting time to be creative and go a little deeper with your relationships and put that out for people to experience, you know.
When there's so many tools in the virtual world for creativity. So yeah, I love this. Another question, we talked a little bit about the diner reviews. What do you think is the best way to interact or respond to these right now, you know, if in the event of a positive review or a negative review?
I think to have a standard answer that, you know, you can edit, but to really, because it's going to be individual situations. To respond, I think, is key if it's valid. I mean, Elizabeth, I would be curious to see your Connecticut's friend's response. Maybe that could be shared somehow. But I do think, again, let's hope that the way forward is with compassion and understanding. We are all in this together globally. So I think, and if it's not for you, then guess what? See you later. If you don't want to participate, don't. That is your choice. So I think, you know, you want to have a thoughtful response. But the reality is, if you're doing your best and you're communicating and you're transparent, we're all doing our best. So if you choose this time to criticize and make fun of and be snarky, I do not think that's the way forward.
Yep.
My company gives me a 24-hour rule. I'm not allowed to get on them. I don't have the passcodes because God knows that's where
You're gonna rip them.
what I would actually say to people. So my PR teams are also involved in that blockade. But you know, I agree, Becca. I think that, I mean, you have to have a standard answer. You have to, and you know, my friend Tyler even preemptively apologized that he was even responding to it, because we all have this kind of unwritten rule that, you know, you got to let it go. I mean, you can't please everybody. And, you know, for the most part, you know, when somebody goes off the rails, we try to, you know, to nicely or send them an email offline. But, you know, there's times where you just push somebody too far, and that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and sometimes it's just ridiculous. Like I've learned, because we get all kinds of diner complaints and restaurant complaints all day long, right? And in the middle of the COVID crisis, somebody's screaming at me for sending them an email about our open door pricing, right? And I just had to say, like, let me take a deep breath here. Let me calm down. And you don't need to be so mean during this period of time, right? It's tough times for everybody. Everyone needs a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
Well, but look at that woman in Central Park yesterday who went off the rails. And I mean, God, what a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's too
okay.
deep.
We've got
Betsy,
time for just one more. More question. Is there anything that you've done differently during this crisis that you'll keep doing in your restaurants permanently, Elizabeth? Like, is there one thing that has worked really well that you invented for this purpose?
I mean, we, knock on wood, had an incredible Mother's Day, and it was all, you know, to go, because we weren't reopened at that point. We did between brunch and dinner, I think we did about 180 family meals. So times that by 4. And so when we were talking about Father's Day, one of our chefs was like, well, do you think we're still going to be doing this for Father's Day? I said, we're going to be doing this for a very long time, because I think that while, like Becca, I am very encouraged that our business is resilient and our industry is resilient. It's going to take time. I mean, that's just the reality of it. The conventions and the trips that have been canceled to Las Vegas aren't rematerializing, you know, overnight. And so, you know, I think that whole kind of family style to go packaging, making it, you know, easy for people to, you know, to celebrate in their own home. the thing I hope that goes away is the Zoom call. I'm totally done.
Actually, I was going to say, this is one of the best ones of these because, Elizabeth, I know you, but it's always hard to read the body language. But I think we're flowing well on this one.
I know. And you got all the people swimming behind me that don't know that they're now on a webinar.
I think you should keep the teddy bear at every table. And I also just had an idea for you. Didn't you consult on the American Girl Doll Cafe? Didn't you?
Yeah. How do you remember that?
I don't know. But listen, think about how they were so, prescient because you can get a doll and bring it to your table before Patrick O'Connell was doing it. But now you could have where you could pick like your teddy bears or your stuff down and then put them at the table next to you. Like, who do you want to, hey, like you can just like.
Becca, my teddy bears say, please don't touch. The bears are in quarantine, because you just want to cuddle these bears, but then that gets into the gross touching. And they have masks. My bears have masks.
Yeah. So good.
Great. Such good conversation today. I know that we could keep talking forever, but this wraps our time. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Elizabeth and Becca and Andrea. As promised, a recording of this webinar will be made available shortly. And for all the latest updates at OpenTable, we invite you to visit our restaurant.opentable.com website. We hope you'll join us again next Wednesday when we're joined by Ben's Friends founders, Steve Palmer and Mickey Baxt, to discuss addiction assistance and mental health in the industry. Until then, please stay safe, take good care, be kind to yourself and to others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us.
Oh, yeah. This was